So let's talk a little bit about what self-medication is. In the previous sections of the video, I talked about the three brains and talked about the different neurotransmitters. Well, those neurotransmitters have to be at a particular amount for each one, and proportionately they have to fit with all the other neurotransmitters. And if they do, we tend to run extremely well. So we've got GABA that slows us down, serotonin that slows us down, norepinephrine, dopamine, and acetylcholine that raise us up, give us memory and concentration. And if all those neurotransmitters are doing well, we generally don't have a ton of an appetite for anything. If there's a problem in any of those neurotransmitters or in the proportionate part of the neurotransmitters, what will happen is people will become obsessed or irritable or distracted or anxious, or they're going to move towards addictions. Okay? So basically what the body is saying is, look, I don't feel good, I'd like to feel better, and since everyone does a bit of experimentation with alcohol and drugs, at least in their teens or early 20s, what happens is sometimes someone with low neurotransmitter takes a drug, either liquid like alcohol or tablet or powder form, and it acts like a key that turns in the lock and makes that person feel better. Well, the body likes that, and so it tends to keep coming back to the well, which is really understandable. People are smart, but the body is smart in a very limited short-term fashion. It doesn't think down the road. It doesn't make that kind of distinction until the cost becomes overwhelming. So what tends to occur is that people with certain psychiatric conditions like ADD will tend to feel better momentarily with either marijuana, hallucinogens, or most of the time speed, amphetamines, cocaine, nicotine, or caffeine. And what they do is they overuse those substances and they're self-medicating for that condition. And they don't tend to realize it. Well, for most of these conditions, whether it's bipolar or ADD, something like that, a psychiatric medication or a natural supplement, if you can tailor it perfectly for that person, will create the same and even better benefits with much less cost, both short-term and long-term. So when that happens, the body doesn't continue to crave more and more. You don't get the tolerance effect, whether it's either with a supplement or a psychotropic. And so the person does better, loses their desire for, let me say that more clearly, loses their chemical desire for another chemical. They still might have the learning that moves them forward. They still might have the habit. And if it's a primary addiction, they are still going to go for it from that position. So the way that I look at addiction is that it's very, very complex, very multifaceted. And what you want to do is you want to treat all the, well, let me back up. You want to make a really good social history. You want to evaluate the situation and in your own mind as a clinician decide whether you think there's a learning component, a primary addiction component, or a self-medication component. Once you find that, you tailor the treatment for that particular person. So oftentimes with people with ADD, you get them on either the right medication or the right natural supplement like AdCare, and what happens is they just lose their appetite for the street drugs or the alcohol, and you don't have to do much education or treatment at all. Other people, you have to make sure that you do quite a bit of that, and that you treat each section of it. Now, unfortunately, there tends to be some proprietary infighting, as there almost always are, with political groups, differing opinions. So people in AA for years just said, you can't take anything. Any drug is a drug, and it'll do the same thing, even aspirin, which isn't addictive. The treatment centers, most of them out there, are not dual diagnosis treatment centers. Dual diagnosis means exactly that they see a primary addiction and a self-medicating component, and so they're going to treat both. But even most dual diagnosis hospitals don't do a great job at looking at the depression or the ADD. In fact, often ADD is not even realized as one of the major prime movers for alcohol and drug abuse. It's an incredible proportion that are doing those drugs because of ADD, and that is not well known in the field. So most treatment centers, even the dual diagnosis, pay the majority of attention to the primary condition, the primary addiction, and rely very, very heavily on 12-step. I have a lot of respect for 12-step treatment. I think it is wonderful, and for a good 25 years, it was about all there was. They did a much better job than the psychiatric community. But I do think that to really get the job done well, to be as inclusive as you can, you have to look at the human being as a whole. And that's what the whole holistic movement is about, is looking at every single side of the problem and not simplifying it just to simplify it, but to treat each part effectively. And that's what I've tried to teach in this video, because most people don't focus on the biochemical component. So I stressed that part because of it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I urge you to get comprehensive treatment and not sugar